Greetings, my dear viewer. This is a channel about marital infidelity and about the consequences if one spouse starts to cheat on the other. If you, as well as I do, support true family values and condemn cheating, then subscribe to the channel and give this video a like. Let's get started. Eleanor burst through her parents' front door, her face pale and streaked with tears. Her mother, Penelope Strickland, immediately sensed something was gravely wrong. "Eleanor, honey, what happened?" she asked, pulling her daughter into a tight embrace. Eleanor collapsed into her mother's arms, her sobs shaking her entire body. Between broken cries, she managed to choke out, "Zachary, he's gone." Penelope cradled her daughter, gently stroking her hair, trying to calm her enough to speak. Eleanor pulled back just slightly, her trembling hands thrusting an envelope toward her father, Anthony Strickland. "He sent this to me at work," she managed to say through ragged breaths. Anthony took the envelope cautiously, his expression unreadable, and before opening it, he asked in a measured tone, "Where's Benjamin? Is he with Zachary?" Sniffling, Eleanor nodded weakly. "Yes, Zachary dropped Kevin off here earlier, said he needed to run errands with Benjamin." She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, her voice faltering as she added, "And then I got this, divorce papers, at my office." Anthony sank into his armchair, his gaze shifting between his wife and daughter, who clung to each other on the couch like two survivors on a lifeboat. While Penelope whispered soothing words, Anthony unfolded the divorce papers with deliberate care. His face darkened as he read. "No warning, no discussion. He served her at work," he muttered, anger simmering beneath his calm exterior. He scanned the document again and then turned his attention to Eleanor. "He's accusing you of infidelity. Is there any truth to it?" Eleanor's face crumpled. "No, I've never cheated on him. He's convinced I'm having an affair with someone at work, but it's not true. I love him," she sobbed, her voice breaking into a heartbreaking cry. Anthony's lips pressed into a tight line. He didn't believe for a moment that the accusation was legitimate. "This reeks of a setup," he thought grimly. Out loud, he asked, "Did he ever say what made him suspicious? Why would he think you were unfaithful?" Eleanor's frustration bubbled over. "I don't know. Maybe it's because I hugged a coworker after we closed a big sale," she said bitterly. Then, hesitating, she added in a quieter voice, "There was one incident. After a work party, I was drunk, and a colleague kissed me. I stopped him the second I realized what was happening, and nothing else happened. I swear." Anthony's frown deepened as he turned the page. "He's asking for joint custody of Benjamin but wants no involvement with Kevin," he said, his tone laced with disbelief. "In fact, he's requesting that Kevin's last name be changed and his name removed from the birth certificate. Do you know why?" The room fell silent. Penelope and Eleanor exchanged a horrified glance before Eleanor crumpled into her mother's arms, sobbing anew. Anthony's voice broke through the noise, steady and commanding. "Eleanor, look at me." Reluctantly, Eleanor lifted her tear-streaked face to meet her father's piercing gaze. Penelope watched uneasily as Anthony's tone grew heavier. "He claims Kevin isn't his child. There is a DNA test here that shows there is less than a 1% chance that Zachary is the father. Is that true?" Eleanor let out a strangled cry, burying her face against her mother's shoulder. Penelope shot her husband a sharp glare. "You're not helping," she snapped. Anthony didn't back down. "Did you know about this?" he asked Penelope, his voice cold. "Did Eleanor tell you?" Penelope hesitated, weighing the implications of her answer. Finally, she replied, "No. This is news to me, too. Eleanor's just as blindsided as we are." Anthony didn't look convinced. "Hand over your phones," he demanded. "Both of you." Penelope bristled. "What? No! You're not going to violate our privacy like that." Anthony's gaze hardened. "If there's nothing to hide, you won't mind. Either you unlock them, or I'm filing for divorce tomorrow." Penelope's voice turned venomous. "I've never given you a reason to distrust me, Anthony. You're not getting our phones, and we're not getting divorced." His tone was steel. "I've ignored too many lies over the years, but no more. Watching my daughter let another man raise her child has changed everything. Phones, now, or this ends here." Penelope snapped, her composure shattering. "To hell with you! I'll take everything you have and leave you with nothing." Anthony stood, tossing the papers onto the coffee table. His voice was low, tinged with disappointment. "Do what you feel you need to," he said before walking into the kitchen, leaving the family fractured in his wake. Just minutes later, he reappeared, a plastic Ziploc bag in hand. Flipping the bag inside out and slipping it over his hand like a makeshift glove, he meticulously gathered the cluster of used napkins scattered in front of Eleanor. Once the task was complete, he turned the bag right side out and sealed it with a sharp, deliberate motion, pinching the zipper tightly between his fingers. Penelope's voice shattered the silence, a piercing cry of outrage. "What do you think you're doing?" she snapped, her hand trembling as she pointed accusingly at the bag. Her entire body seemed to vibrate with anger, a fury Anthony had never directly faced in almost 30 years of marriage. It struck him that he might not truly know the woman he'd shared his life with. "I'm going to contact Zachary and ask him about the DNA testing service he used," Anthony replied evenly, his tone calm but firm. "He found out Kevin wasn't his son. I need to know if Eleanor is mine, or if you've been lying to me for nearly 3 decades. Penelope let out a guttural scream and lunged at him, her nails clawing toward his face with unrestrained fury. The sensation of losing one's breath is indescribable unless you've lived it. The panicked, suffocating fight to inhale again. Instinct kicked in for Anthony. Despite it being 4 decades since his short-lived karate practice, the muscle memory remained. As Penelope's nails raked his skin, he reflexively delivered a precise strike to her solar plexus. The hit wasn't aggressive, just enough to knock the air from her lungs. She crumpled to the floor, gasping for breath, her face etched with terror. As Penelope writhed on the ground, Eleanor's scream pierced the air, panic evident as she watched her mother struggle. Unshaken, Anthony turned on his heel and walked to his office. He knew Penelope would regain her breath in moments, but he couldn't wait. He needed to leave before she gathered herself. Moving quickly, he packed his laptop, iPad, and a few changes of clothes. Before departing, he accessed the Wi-Fi router and reset the password. Penelope depended on the internet for everything from Facebook to Reddit. Without Wi-Fi, she'd be effectively cut off. With his belongings stuffed into a backpack, Anthony strode past his recovering wife without a word and left. 3 decades of marriage were over. His first stop was a nearby McDonald's, where he connected to their free Wi-Fi. There, he accessed his financial accounts. Methodically, he paid off and closed their joint American Express Gold card, followed by their Chase card. Using the bill pay function, he transferred half the funds from their joint bank account to himself, under the guise of paying his landscaping business. It was a simple, efficient move. Later that evening, Anthony arrived at the Davis household. Adam Davis greeted him at the door with a knowing expression. "What a disaster this turned out to be," Anthony began. "Disaster doesn't even cover it," Adam replied, leading him to the patio overlooking the golf course. "Bourbon?" The men sat with their drinks in hand, the weight of the situation hanging heavy. Finally, Anthony broke the silence. "How's Zachary holding up?" he asked. Adam raised an eyebrow. "Seriously? Do you even need to ask? He's losing his youngest son, Anthony, and you're losing your grandson. You don't just bounce back from this." Anthony's shoulders sagged under the guilt. "I can't face Eleanor or her mother. Penelope knew Kevin might not be Zachary's, and she stayed silent. Now I don't even know if Eleanor is mine." Adam's expression darkened. "Babe's furious. I've never seen her this upset. If Eleanor weren't Benjamin's mother, I think she'd have done something drastic." Anthony nodded grimly. "Keep her calm. We don't need more drama." Their conversation was interrupted by Babe herself, storming into the room with a cold glare fixed on Anthony. "Why is he here?" she demanded, her voice icy. "And why are there police outside?" Adam raised a hand in an attempt to pacify her. "Take it easy, honey. Anthony's on Zachary's side." Before Adam could explain further, the doorbell rang. Two police officers stood on the porch, their expressions unreadable. Anthony met their gaze, his face calm but resigned. "I expected this," he said quietly, turning to offer his wrists for handcuffs. As the officers led him away, Adam assured him, "I'll call Zachary. We'll sort this out." 6 months later, the chaos had largely subsided. Eleanor had fiercely contested the divorce, initially proposing counseling before shifting to unreasonable demands. DNA results ultimately confirmed that Eleanor was, in fact, Anthony's biological daughter. The revelation brought him a strange mix of relief and disappointment. While his love for her remained, any respect he once had was irreparably lost. Contact between Anthony and Eleanor dwindled to almost nothing, and he doubted it would ever return to what it once was. She denied him any opportunity to meet his grandson, Kevin. A photograph of Anthony, taken at a pharmacy and clearly displaying scratches and fingernail marks on his face, served as key evidence to clear him of a Class C misdemeanor charge for allegedly assaulting his wife. At the same time, Anthony was entangled in divorce proceedings with Penelope, a woman he neither trusted nor respected. Penelope was vehemently opposed to the divorce, and her legal team continually delayed the process. It seemed the stalemate could have dragged on indefinitely if not for a violent incident involving Penelope and Eleanor in a nightclub parking lot. The two women were unable to identify their attacker. However, surveillance footage revealed a small figure, dressed entirely in black and wearing a ski mask, launching a brutal assault. Armed with what appeared to be a slender, weighted rod, the assailant struck the women repeatedly. The video showed the steel bar bending under the force of the blows. Despite sustaining severe injuries, including broken bones and several lost teeth, both women survived without lasting physical damage. From their hospital beds, they confessed they had no idea who might have targeted them, though they speculated that Eleanor's husband, Zachary Davis, could have had a motive. However, Zachary's towering 6'3" height ruled him out as the perpetrator, leaving investigators without any credible leads. The attack profoundly altered Penelope and Eleanor's lives. Their social outings ceased entirely, replaced by a life of anxious confinement at home, where they often quarreled. Over time, they gave up contesting the divorce. Custody arrangements for Benjamin were finalized with a shared 50-50 split, naming Zachary as the primary custodial parent. Neither Penelope nor Zachary received child or spousal support as part of the agreement. New revelations emerged during the court proceedings. DNA tests, ordered by the court, proved that Andrew Hebert was Kevin's biological father, leading to Zachary's name being removed from Kevin's birth certificate. As a result, Andrew was mandated to pay child support to Eleanor. The consequences for Andrew were severe. His wife filed for divorce, leaving him financially responsible for their 3 children, as well as obligated to pay spousal support. Since Andrew had insisted his wife remain a homemaker since the birth of their first child, the financial strain plunged him into poverty, a condition he was unlikely to overcome. Meanwhile, Zachary found stability through the unwavering support of his parents. Despite the turmoil caused by his wife's infidelity, he retained his position at Anthony's landscaping business, where he continued to invest in its growth. Benjamin thrived in this environment, though his visits to his mother's home became a source of emotional difficulty. During these visits, his mother alternated between expressing anger toward Zachary and tearfully lamenting her separation from him. At the same time, his grandmother's animosity toward Anthony remained undiminished. Penelope's bitterness deepened as Anthony's charm and popularity among the single women at their country club became evident. Despite the upheaval, Anthony's parents, Adam and Babe, stood firmly by their son and grandson. Babe, undeterred by the challenges in her family, remained a formidable presence. Even with missing clubs from her set, she secured her fifth consecutive victory in the Women's Golf Championship, reinforcing her indomitable spirit. My friend, and this is the end of the story. If you liked this story, then put your royal like and subscribe to the channel. May the force be with you. Well, look who showed up. The internet just got better. If this is your first time here, do the classic YouTube two-step. Subscribe and share with someone who needs a laugh today. Oh, and let me know where on Earth or beyond you're watching from. I read 'em all. Showtime. When I met Cassie for the first time, everything felt vibrant and full of promise. She had a spark about her, an effortless charisma that made heads turn whenever she entered a space. That kind of self-assurance was magnetic, and I was drawn in almost instantly. Her lively nature played off my steady demeanor in a way that just worked. In the early days, we found an easy rhythm. Weekend drives, impromptu date nights, long conversations that stretched into morning hours. She loved splurging on shopping getaways and going on inspiration retreats. I handled the practical side, focused on work, managed the budget, kept the ship steady. For a time, the setup was solid. But eventually something shifted. She stopped engaging, stopped showing interest in the little things, like how my day had gone. Eventually, I stopped expecting her to ask. The quiet that settled in wasn't peaceful, it echoed. We weren't partners anymore, just two people drifting through the same routine in the same space. I kept fulfilling my role, working hard, covering the expenses, while she floated through as if life owed her comfort on demand. It didn't come crashing down overnight. The decline was slow, almost imperceptible. We used to have harmless disagreements about movies, dinner plans, weekend trips. They were annoying at times, sure, but they meant we still cared. Then even that faded. Conversations disappeared. Meals passed in silence. She would scroll endlessly on her phone. I'd just sit, staring blankly, wondering when exactly we stopped existing. Then Noah entered the picture. She introduced him casually, someone from an old job she occasionally grabbed coffee with. I didn't give it much thought at first, but his name started showing up more and more. Late-night texts, notifications lighting up her phone while we sat across from each other. And her smile, one I hadn't seen in years, was suddenly reserved for his messages. I didn't confront her. I simply paid attention. Then one Tuesday evening, it happened. I was rinsing dishes in the kitchen, and she was glued to her screen at the table. It felt like any other night until it didn't. Without even looking up, she said, "I'm leaving tonight." No build-up. No fight. Just those words, flat and definite. I stood still, my palm resting against the countertop, trying to process what she'd said. She didn't meet my eyes. Kept scrolling. "What do you mean you're leaving?" I asked, my voice even. "I need space, Hugh," she said, still focused on her screen. "Please don't reach out." "Okay," I responded, calm, unemotional. She looked up then, probably surprised, expecting an outburst. Tears. Something dramatic. But I didn't offer any of that. Just one word. She frowned. "That's it? Just okay?" "You're leaving," I said. "What do you want me to do? Barricade the door? Hold you hostage?" Her expression tightened. Not from guilt. Not from regret. Just frustration. "I'll return for the rest of my stuff another day," she said. That's when I noticed the duffel bag, already packed, resting near the kitchen island. This wasn't sudden. She'd planned it. Probably rehearsed the moment. "Fine," I said. No begging. No objections. She stood, slung the bag over her shoulder, picked up her purse and keys, and walked out. The door clicked shut behind her. The silence that followed wasn't just quiet. It was conclusive. She'd made her move. Now it was my turn. I didn't go after her. Didn't call or text. She'd made her intentions clear. I grabbed my laptop and took a seat at the table. If she was out, then she was all the way out. First step, cutting her off financially. Cassie loved flashing that Amex, treating it like a badge of prestige at high-end restaurants, boutiques, and during her online shopping sprees. But that card wasn't really hers. It was a supplementary card on my account. I logged in, found her profile, and hit remove. Just like that, authorization was gone. No more access. Next up, her visa. Continued. It followed the same pattern, one more thread quietly severed. Then I turned to the automated payments. Every month, a sizable sum had been funneling from my primary account into hers. She had labeled it household support. In reality, it went toward spa visits, high-end accessories, and those so-called creative escapes that only ever seemed to result in more credit card debt. I terminated the transfers. Her number was still linked to my family's phone plan. I didn't cancel it yet, but I shut off her international access immediately. I wasn't angry. Not really. This wasn't retaliation. It was practicality. She'd drawn a clear boundary. No calls, no marriage, no more connection. That naturally included my money. Actions have outcomes. That night, the silence in the house felt different. Not hollow, calm. A stillness I hadn't felt in years. 3 days slipped by. Then came the pounding, sharp, relentless strikes on the front door that made the frame tremble. I checked the peephole. There stood Cassie. Her hair unkempt, wearing a hoodie far from her usual designer outfits. Her eyes were wide, cheeks flushed, like she'd sprinted the whole way. I opened the door just slightly. "Hugh!" she panted, nearly breathless. "My card got declined at dinner. What did you do?" Leaning against the door frame, I replied evenly, "I canceled it." Her mouth parted in disbelief. "You what? Why would you do that? You said you didn't want contact. You left. Those accounts were in my name, not yours. So I removed your access." She looked at me like I was speaking another language. "That card was mine, Hugh. I need it for—" I didn't let her finish. "For dinner with Noah? The same guy you've been texting constantly? The one people saw you with earlier this week?" She froze, just a flicker of hesitation, but I saw it. Then the excuses began. "He's just a friend. That's not the point. You humiliated me. Do you know how embarrassing that was? Sounds like something you and Noah need to sort out," I answered, voice level. Her face twisted in frustration. "This isn't fair. My visa didn't go through either, and I didn't get the monthly transfer. What am I supposed to do? Maybe work. Budget. Adjust," I said without emotion. She wiped at her cheek. Her voice dropped into something more desperate. "Noah's letting me stay with him, but it's temporary. It's not enough. I need support, Hugh. Just until I can land on my feet." I lifted an eyebrow. "So you've got shelter. That's something. You'll figure the rest out." Her lower lip trembled, but then she snapped. "You'll regret this. We're still legally married. You can't just freeze me out like this. I'll sue." I took a step back and placed my hand on the door. "Do whatever you think is necessary." Then I closed it behind me. I exhaled slowly. Round one was over. But the sound of the door clicking shut wasn't closure. It was just the beginning. By Monday, my receptionist notified me that Cassie had called the office 3 separate times, all insisting on speaking with me. Each time, she was told I was unavailable, tied up in meetings. She said Cassie's voice had shifted, firm at first, then hysterical. I never called back. Soon after, the messages started pouring in, from mutual friends. "Hugh, she's seriously shaken. Could you maybe just hear her out?" Or, "She says you've completely cut her off. Is that true?" I replied when necessary. Short, civil, detached. Cassie called time on the marriage and insisted on complete silence between us. I honored that, simple as that. Most people respected the situation and backed off. Those who kept pressing got no response from me. Then her brother showed up. It was Wednesday evening when I pulled into the driveway and saw Sammy waiting, arms folded, expression set. He didn't waste a second. "What the hell are you doing to my sister, Hugh?" he snapped. "She's a mess." "You can't just abandon her like this." "She walked away from me," I replied calmly, unlocking the door. "She made it clear she didn't want contact. I'm just respecting her boundaries. You shut down her cards, cut off her money. That's heartless." "That support existed because she was my spouse," I said. "She doesn't want that role anymore. That decision has consequences." Sammy frowned, shaking his head. "She screwed up, sure. But you don't just turn your back on someone after a decade together." I faced him directly. "She's the one who left. I'm not turning my back. I'm simply not paying for her new lifestyle." His eyes narrowed. "She's going to take legal action." "She probably will," I answered without blinking. "Good night, Sammy." I stepped inside and locked the door behind me. The very next day, I got a Venmo notification. It was Cassie, requesting $500, tagged emergency. I declined it without hesitation. By Friday, I called a locksmith. He spent over an hour changing out every lock on the property. For the first time since she had left, I knew without a doubt that she couldn't walk back in without my say-so. If this was about testing boundaries, I was ready. I wasn't moving an inch. Not long after, an envelope showed up in my mailbox. Thick, official-looking, with the name of a law firm stamped on the front. Cassie had retained an attorney. The letter accused me of cutting off support, inflicting emotional hardship, and demanded I reinstate her monthly allowance and resume covering her expenses until we finalized things. There was even a claim for spousal support. I didn't get flustered. I forwarded the whole thing to Helen, my lawyer. She's sharp, to the point, and doesn't tolerate nonsense. The following day, Helen rang me after reviewing the letter. "It's textbook scare tactics," she said. "She left the home voluntarily, told you not to contact her, and is now staying with Noah. Her case doesn't hold up." Helen mapped out the response plan. We'd reply formally, firm, civil, and free of emotion. The letter would clearly state that the house was mine before marriage, our finances were always separate, and the monthly payments had only stopped after Cassie ended the relationship. For the first time in a while, I let myself breathe. Helen prepared the reply that week, concise, professional, and legally airtight. Cassie didn't take it well. Soon enough, I began receiving messages from mutual friends, screenshots, links to her posts. She was spinning a narrative online, calling me a controlling, abusive husband who left her destitute. I didn't react. I muted, blocked, archived, let her shout into the void. If she wanted to stir up drama, fine. I had everything cataloged, screenshots, timestamps, digital receipts, all neatly stored in a folder. My friend Jacob, who works in law, gave me some advice. Track every call, every text, document everything. People like this thrive in disorder. Don't let them pull you into it. So I did exactly that. Every voicemail Cassie left, saved. Every text, filed away. Every Venmo request, rejected and recorded. I didn't feel rage, not even a trace of annoyance. What settled over me instead was a sharp sense of certainty. She had made her bed. I was simply choosing to lie in mine. 2 months passed before Cassie finally arranged to retrieve her belongings. We agreed on the time, Saturday at 2 p.m. exactly. But she didn't arrive alone. When the doorbell rang, I opened it to find her standing next to Noah. Cassie looked tense, her makeup thick, likely trying to mask the swelling around her eyes. Noah kept his gaze down, refusing to meet mine. "Afternoon," I said evenly. Jacob was behind me, and Helen had sent a paralegal to formally witness the handoff. I wasn't interested in confrontation. Cassie walked in without saying a word. They worked quickly, hauling out luggage, stacks of shoeboxes, makeup kits, and bottles of half-used skincare. It felt less like collecting memories and more like clearing out an estate. Every so often, Cassie would pause, holding up an item. "This is mine," she'd state. I'd quietly respond, "That was a gift from my parents," or "Bought with my credit." The paralegal documented everything. Anything we disagreed on went into a separate pile for later review. Noah's patience frayed as the process dragged on. "This is absurd, Hugh. You're being petty," he muttered. I stayed calm. She takes only what belongs to her. Nothing more. When the final suitcase was forced into the back of Noah's tiny hatchback, the car dipped visibly under the weight. Cassie's face was flushed, part fury, part exhaustion. Noah looked openly irritated, muttering curses as he cast sour glances in my direction. I remained at the doorway, just watching. As the car reversed out of the driveway, I felt no sense of victory. No rush of joy either. Just a steady, quiet finality. The version of Cassie who once strutted through life spending my money, wielding my credit cards, was no more. What left in that overstuffed car was a woman burdened by her choices and by the literal weight of everything she had taken. She was no longer my responsibility. She was headed into someone else's story. And for the first time since she had walked away, I felt a real and lasting calm. Weeks turned into months. The fallout didn't go how Cassie might have planned. It wasn't long before word got around. Noah had stepped out of the picture. Whatever dream she'd built around him, it didn't include him funding her lifestyle. He wasn't interested in playing the provider. By the third month, he was gone. She was left starting over. She picked up a position at a department store, working the cosmetics counter. Nothing shameful, but a far cry from her previous indulgences, boutique binges and self-care retreats. Now she shared a small apartment across town with two other women. I was moving forward in my own way. I sold the house. It was too big, too filled with echoes of a life that no longer existed. Bought something smaller, closer to work. It felt refreshing to unlock the door to a home that was truly mine. Bare walls, sparse furniture, no lingering memories whispering from the corners. The divorce moved through the system quickly. No children to complicate things. The house had been mine before the wedding. Our finances had always been separate. Helen managed the entire process with precision. Cassie's lawyer made a feeble attempt to argue for spousal support. But with her being the one to walk out, choosing to live with Noah, and fully capable of employment, there wasn't much legal ground to stand on. Maybe the court will toss her a symbolic payment for a brief period. Maybe not. Either way, it's immaterial. There were rare moments when a wave of feeling passed over me. Not remorse, not longing. Just a soft ache for the years spent, for the woman I once thought she was. But those feelings never stayed long. Because in the end, it was all very simple. She wanted out. I let her go. She asked for space. I gave it to her. She demanded freedom. I delivered it without hesitation. No compromises, no backup plan. She chose her course, and I quietly chose mine. The most effective revenge wasn't loud or messy. It was what I had in that exact moment. Calm. A place that was mine. A life that belonged to me again. Cassie assumed that leaving would devastate me. What it actually did was lift a weight off my shoulders. And honestly, that freedom was worth more than anything.